Falter over Culture, you're welcome indeed to another edition of the programme. Just to remind you, as always, we'll be crossing over to Manchester to join Martin Logan, who's out and about once again with the Irish community right across the UK. But this week we're at Moore Hall on the shores of Lough Carra in Carnarcon. Moore Hall, a splendid mansion built in 1795 with its wonderful woodlands and gardens, and remained so until the 1920s, a troublesome period in our history which saw the burning of this historic building. But thanks to a cross-border initiative by Newry, Mourne and Down District Council in Northern Ireland and Mayo County Council, plans to restore this magnificent building moved a step closer.
Well, at the moment now we're standing here on Moore Hall, and as you can see it's the Lough Carra. It's a very famous lake for fishing, for trout, and it's an early lake for mayfly. We're in the centre of a few towns here. We're from Castlebar, Claremorris and Ballinrobe. We're about between 9 and 10 miles, and another 14 or 15 to Westport. There's a lot of history and historical sites around the area. They have, where we are present at the moment is Moore Hall, and that was a very historical and area for the moors of Moore Hall. There's a launch here today of the cross-border cooperation. It's between Derry Moor House and Moore Hall House. Previous community councils have always been pursuing this project as they realise its importance. But I suppose when we got involved in ourselves, we realised how little expertise we had and how lack of finance as well. So that's where all these other communities, Leader and the County Council, have bought this property now in cooperation with National Parks and Wildlife, and I'd say the project is looking good for the future.
This project is one of our, it's probably our leading cooperation project under the LEADER programme, and really the cooperation project is all about pooling the knowledge and skills and experience and resources, and this initiative really captured this. And it was, for me, it was really interesting to hear about Derry Moor, because you can see so much of what we have, maybe Derry Moor doesn't have, but what Derry Moor has, we would like to have as well. So there's a lot of learning, and we know there's a lot of exchange that we can make, and it's really what the LEADER cooperation project is about.
When we first met Carnarcon, it was a mirror image of ourselves, both in their warmth, their hospitality and their enthusiasm for the project. And to a certain extent, your project mirrored ours. We have an historic context regarding our hall, Moore Hall and Derry Moor. We have massive, massive potential. We in Derry Moor wish all our friends in Mayo every success in your journey at Moore Hall, and we feel privileged to be a part of helping you achieve this. Funny, my wife is a Down woman and I'm a true Derry person, but both of our grandmothers are born in Mayo, so we have a wee bit of history to do before we come back again. So we're proud of that. It's in our system. I also remember reading in one of your local papers, I don't know how long it goes back, and it was an article, maybe someone here put it together, but after walking and looking at the hall yesterday, and reminded that these trees probably weren't here at that time, and we're looking down upon the lake. There's two final lines. Moore Hall might look across Lough Carra again without his toothless grin. Perhaps one day the lights will go on in its upper floors and shine across the lake. I hope to be here when the person on that upper floor switches the light on. Right. So I wish you all the very, very best of luck. Thank you.
In 2010 I started my doctorate on Moore Hall. I had been initially interested in the history of the area, but the focus became more and more in the house and the family because of the fascinating story that's there. So I finished that 2 years ago, and I uncovered quite a lot. There was obviously the stories that were known locally and the folklore of the family, but there were some very interesting stories that came out that weren't known either. So in particular the women of Moore Hall became a great fascination of mine, and I hope to bring that further, and the connections with Spain in particular. But I also looked at the building itself and recreated it conjecturally, what it would have looked like, and it was a hub of activity and certainly a shining powerhouse in this area. And they were a wonderful family. They looked after their tenants, and that kind of appreciation is still there with the wonderful community here in Carnicon who are working on this project at the moment, and hopefully we'll be continuing and furthering that work and that history.
As soon as the news broke that Mayo County Council had purchased the project, the numbers coming to Moore Hall, who were large until then, probably quadrupled. And there is no day passes now when there aren't 10 or 12 cars in the car park at any time. So there's enormous goodwill and enormous excitement about Moore Hall, not just for its beauty, and as you can see there's a beauty and tranquility about the place, but with the unrivaled history of the Moore family. First president of Connacht, John Moore, 1798, lived only 1 year after that. He was captured by the British at the time, died in captivity in Waterford. Subsequent generations then produced the likes of George Moore, the historian, another very important international figure. George Moore, the novelist, who was known all over the world in literary circles. His brother, Colonel Maurice Moore, who was appointed to both governments as a senator, both by the first Fine Gael government in 1918 and De Valera in 1932. But they're renowned particularly for their compassion. And the father of George the novelist would be George Henry Moore, who was also an MP in England for 2 sessions, lost the seat at one stage. But they had a horse called Corana who won the Chester Cup in 1846, won £17,000 at the time, and distributed a portion of that money during the famine to people who needed it badly. And they bought a cow for every family that didn't have a cow. And it's for that reason, and that for their traditional generosity, for the esteem in which they are held, that there is widespread support and excitement about the restoration of Moore Hall.
Why did Mayo County Council get involved in Moore Hall and purchasing some of the lands here?
Well, Henry, as you know and as you can feel while you're here, it's a very special place. It's a very historic place. It's historic in terms of the Republic of Connacht in 1798. It's historic in terms of the arts and culture. It's also historic in terms of the kind of sense of justice and the difference that different people have made in our history and in the dealing with local people over the years. There are very few places where you can talk about a story of the owner of a stately home essentially betting the ranch on a horse race to try and keep the wolf from the door for his tenants. So it's a very important place, and we've been involved with Councillor MacDonald and the local community here going back over 20-30 years, just trying to keep the flame of Moore Hall alive, keep the story alive, and to develop a project which we could move forward towards a rehabilitation, a refurbishment of the house. And thankfully, very recently we had the opportunity, in collaboration with the National Parks and Wildlife Service, for whom this is also a very important location, and Culture, to put a bid in to take ownership of the 80 acres and the house itself back into the local authority, so that we are more in a driving position for the project over the next 20 years, because this will be a very long-term project, obviously, in collaboration again with the National Parks and Wildlife, looking after our natural heritage, the ecology of the place, the horseshoe bats, and all of the many kind of threads that come together in this location. That's why we got involved.
The cross-border initiative, then, a big investment announced today for Moore Hall.
Yeah, and it's great to be here with our friends from Derrymore House, and you know, in a context where Brexit is still uncertain, the North-South cooperation is even more important than it would be at any other time. And the friendships that are starting to evolve around the link between two very special places and two very special communities is really important. The investment, which was announced today, will be a step towards the eventual restoration, rehabilitation, bringing this place back to the kind of national prominence that it should have.
Well, it's time for us to take a commercial break, but don't go away, we've lots more to come from magnificent Moore Hall in part 2. So we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Moore Hall itself, it's designated a special area conservation. It's a European site, and it's designated for the conservation of lesser horseshoe bats, who have internationally important winter roost in the basement of the house itself, and also they have a maternity roost in the granary associated with the farm buildings. Now, we have a memorandum of understanding with Mayo County Council regarding the management and the future development of Moore Hall, the property that they've acquired here, and we're developing a master plan including the Mayo County Council property, and as well as part of Lough Carra's estate lake, which is adjacent to this property, and some of the islands in the lake are state-owned islands.
Are we looking at total 80 acres here?
The council acquired about 80 acres. What's designated the special area conservation is only the footprint of the house itself and the granary building associated with the agricultural buildings. But the whole woodland, the 80 acres or so of woodland that's around the house, and that is also very important for the bats, for foraging area and for commuting routes, but as well for other wildlife.
You were very enthusiastic about this project from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, at the minute I'm the chair of the Moore, Gullion and Lakeal Rural Development Partnership. This is obviously an ongoing rural development programme, and our last programme we felt was lacking in really good cooperation projects. So we all collectively went out to see what was out there that could do with a bit of investment and that would really leave the mark for the entire community and deliver a project that was something that we could be proud of. So one of the projects that we came up with from our end was Derrymore House, which is a beautiful old house, much different from Moore Hall, but built in the same era. There were a lot of similarities between the landlords at the time. They were on different sides regarding the Act of Union and lots of different historical links. And I was very passionate about Derrymore because I had worked closely with the Friends of Derrymore, who were extremely passionate about the history of the house and the significance of it. They just had never been able to get that little bit of funding which they needed. And thanks to a huge amount of effort and commitment from the management team from the Rural Development Programme, our two respective councils and our two respective community associations, we have been able to forge really strong links between Moore Hall and Derrymore House. And, we get on superbly well. We thoroughly enjoy each other's company, and the more we talk, the more we see, the similarities we have, the links that we have. And of course Moore Hall has moved on, that it's now in the ownership of the council, which opens up a whole new opportunity for the development of Moore Hall and for the people of this beautiful area as to what is possible. And I'm really proud to say that I think that has come from a little nudge from the Rural Development Programme. So I think it's a win-win for us all. And
because of this cross-border initiative, a major investment was announced today for which you were here for.
Absolutely. And that is it. There are so many groups like this throughout the country, really. And while the passion is there, the desire is there, they need money at the end of the day. So, this has been hopefully what will be the start of financial investment coming into Moore Hall. We have had the similar investment with ourselves in Darramore. Something similar, we were trying to get funding, we were always just short of being able to achieve that. And like Moore Hall, Darramore, this will deliver the first stage of development, and we are hoping that as the years progress that we will be able to access further pots of money, because we need people to come into these places, really appreciate what's on their doorstep, and that's what it's about. It's about opening up and unlocking the magic that is within our areas.
The first thing was that we had to try and determine what were the common factors between the two projects, because a cooperation project like that, there needs to be similarities in the two projects. And I suppose the obvious similarity is that we're talking about two houses that have huge amount of historical significance in their own places, and not just in their own places but throughout the whole of the country in both cases. So there was that commonality. There was also the commonality that there were two very active and really intent on success community groups in both places, in on the one hand in the Friends of Darramore, and here then in Carnacon with the Local Development Association. So there were those factors. Then I suppose the project then, as it evolves, initially there's a small-ish amount of money available to do study of the two areas, and the idea being that we come up with I suppose an interpretation of the two sites that are parallel, or that are one reflects the other, so that there's learnings from both sites brought to bear on the other site. So the next step in the project will be, when that study is complete, there will be a physical project and a capital project where there will be, and it's not yet determined what that will be, but that will be brought into reality, where we've got an interpretation or a development at Moore Hall, and an interpretation or a development at Darramore that will be relatable to one another, and that there will be parallels. And also, I suppose that in time, and as visitors come here, visitors will be at least aware of Darramore, and likewise people that come to Darramore will become aware of Moore Hall, so that there's that potential there for greater traffic in terms of tourism and so on.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned, great cross traffic there. Finally, it just shows kind of projects can be done cooperative between two jurisdictions and cross border.
That's very true, and we've had a fair bit of experience over the years in dealing with projects, and we have worked with projects in the north of Ireland before, and in Scotland indeed, and that's been useful because we had at least we had a level of I suppose maybe I won't say comfort, but we had a certain level of confidence in our ability to see it through. And we're lucky that our counterparts, both in terms of our community organisations that are referred to, and the local action groups, and the people who are working on the programmes, are similarly motivated, and we're each driving one another in terms of making sure that this project works, and that's very important too.
I must say I'm absolutely delighted to be here today, and as a deputy chairperson of Newry and Down District Council, I am glad that we are forging these links between Newry and Down and County Mayo Council, and we are hoping that our cooperation will go ahead in the future and will develop. It's very important to develop those links and share experiences. This is my first time in County Mayo, and I must say I am absolutely blown away by how beautiful everything is. Beautiful landscapes, very hospitable people, and absolutely delicious food.
Obviously you're not originally from Northern Ireland.
No, I am not. I am originally from Kiev, Ukraine, and as now I am a councillor from Sinn Féin. And I am very proud and honoured to be selected for this position, and proud to be representing the people of Crotleaf. And I must say that yes, politics was a very important for me, because you always have to have a voice to be able to represent your people and to be able to solve issues. So yes, I'm absolutely proud to be a politician, even though I don't. I think that you can be a politician no matter what country you're from and where you're living.
It's great to be involved in a project with Derrymore House. Derrymore House is a National Trust owned property in Bestbrook in County Armagh. It has got a significant walled garden and also fantastic walkways that we're very, very keen to open up to the wider members of the community of Newry Morning Down District Council. And a project like this, working with our friends and colleagues at Derrymore and Muir Hall, is a fantastic opportunity to work towards some capital investment into such a project.
How did it come about in the first place, do you know?
We work specifically in the Rural Development Programme on a cooperation element. There is an opportunity for cross-border and inter-territorial workings in the programme. We forged links with Mayo. We had recognised that Muir Hall and Derrymore House had the same topography, had the same historical context in terms of the house has been built in the 1700s within the same decade, and architecturally they are both extremely significant. And we made contact with our colleagues in County Mayo through the leader group and with Mayo County Council, and we forged extremely warm friendships over this past year and a half to try and work towards capital development of both sites.
And where do you go from here now?
Well, currently we're at design phase. We're working closely with a consultant that's working both north and south, which brings the cooperation element of the programme together. Once we've done that, we'll work towards any planning issues and any other permitted developments, and then further to that, we will then pretty much get spade to ground and get works going between pathways, interpretive panels, play parks, play areas across both sites, and essentially open both sites to the public, increase the tourism product in both Mayo and also in County Armagh through Newry Morning Down District Council, and continue the good work that both areas are doing.
Well, congratulations to everybody involved in this cross-border initiative, and hopefully, please God, in the not too distant future, we'll see life return to Moore Hall, where future generations can enjoy the beauty of the area and the great history that goes with this magnificent building. Now, don't forget, coming up after the break, we're crossing over to Manchester, where Martin Logan is standing by, and I look forward to your company at the same time next week. So until then, slán go fóill.